Official, the news is here. Aidan Hutchinson is signing his contract extension with the Detroit Lions, so let's get right into it. So yes, we have some breaking news. Aidan Hutchinson has been locked up really for 6 seasons with the Detroit Lions because he was under contract for the rest of this year, also his 5th-year option next year, just over $19 million, which could potentially be folded into this new contract. We'll see how all the details shake out, and then 4 more years on top of that. Now, some of the early contract details have been given, though, of course, we're not going to get the full story yet, stating it's a 4-year, $180 million deal, which is $45 million per year, which is the second highest for any edge rusher in the NFL behind Micah Parsons at $46.5 million. But of course, the Lions are getting this done relatively early, so you expect that this could shake up a bit. And also, I mean, the Lions could have gotten it done after last season. They did not, but we also understood that he was coming off a very significant injury where he broke his leg, battled his way to try to get back for the end of the season. It was unable to happen. I remember my ACL doctor was telling me and always updating me on an Aidan Hutchinson situation, saying, hey, man, that's not a bad injury to have. That's an injury that he's going to recover from, and once he does, he's going to be good to go. And he would show me and he would talk to me about the videos that they were putting out there of Aidan Hutchinson running and him getting back to it and saying that, man, Aidan Hutchinson, he looks good. He gave me actually probably the most optimism of all the recovery from Aidan Hutchinson. Now here we are signing his extension, which is after his eligibility, really half of a season so far, halfway through this year, doing it during the bye week. Take advantage of that opportunity to get this deal done. Done pretty darn early, and they gave themselves an opportunity to watch a few games of Aidan Hutchinson coming off of that injury to see how it looks. And let's just say, by the stats, it looks pretty good, and by the film, it looks even better. So we're going to get to that here in a second, but from a Lions fan perspective, and I want to reflect on this very quickly of how cool this is, because I remember it so darn well, man. I was at the 2022 draft in Vegas. Shout out to the Lions. They sent me to that draft, and just the path of him becoming a Detroit Lion still feels insane, the fact that it did work out the way that it did, because it doesn't feel like it should have worked out this way. I mean, you go back to that first draft in 2022, and the Lions are coming off of a season where they won 3 games. They were the number 2 pick in the draft that year. And up to the draft, the early process was, okay, there's no way he's going to be a Lion. It was who is going to be a Lion, not named Aidan Hutchinson. I think everybody early expectation was he's going to be number 1. There was really no talks of like how he could get to number 2. That was just the expectation is that Jacksonville was going to take him. So we had sat there, we had talked about every possible option. I mean, Kyle Hamilton at the time taking a safety. People talked about Malik Willis as a quarterback. I didn't really get into that, but obviously that was some of the conversation at that time as well. There was also, talks of Kayvon Thibodeau, right? I remember doing the breakdown on Kayvon Thibodeau. So it was everybody that's not George Karlaftis. We did all the mock drafts. I mean, everything was a conversation, but Aidan Hutchinson being the Lions' number 2 pick in the NFL draft, because the expectation was Jacksonville was going to take him. Trayvon Walker came into discussion, and I remember how late this led up to. Maybe there was more stories on this, but at the time, I didn't really hear many of them. I just remember the expectation of it was going to be someone named Aidan Hutchinson that was going to be the Lions' pick. Who in the world was going to be? We felt like we didn't really have a clear-cut answer. So by the time we got to the lead-up of, okay, I'm going to the draft, this is really cool, I remember watching just highlights of Aidan Hutchinson, trying to talk myself into it. I don't know how many days it was, but I feel like it was a day or two before I took off for the flight that I was watching highlights of Aidan Hutchinson. I typically wouldn't do this even at this time because it was just the breakdown videos, right? You watch the film, that's all that it really was. But this was one of those players that I remember watching a highlight reel on, just trying to kind of create and manifest some real way that this could become a real thing. And I remember watching it, talking to myself, this could happen, but it's not going to happen, but what if it did? And I remember showing my dad, man, he's going to be a Lion. In a few days, he's going to be a Detroit Lion. And he said that, but it was we know it's not going to happen. And then all of a sudden, you get there to the draft, and it turns into the day of the draft, I believe it was. I'm walking over to Michael Banks' room. Shout out to Michael Banks. And we're getting ready to take off for, going out there for day 1 of the draft. And I remember a report that came through. And it may have been before I even got to the room, but a report came through that Jacksonville was heavily considering taking Trayvon Walker with the number 1 pick in the draft. And right there, it hit you. It was oh my gosh, is this really going to happen? Real quick, before we continue here with Aidan Hutchinson discussion, it's a perfect time to give a shout out to our sponsor of today's video, MyBookie. Make sure you use code DOSE when you sign up for the first time with MyBookie. And any bet up to $500 is covered if you opt in using that bet back bonus token when you sign up using our code DOSE. Over here right now, you can get your defensive player of the year odds. Currently, Aidan Hutchinson is 4 4th at plus 400 to win this award. So if you think this is just going to be the springboard for him leading himself to this award this season, this may be your best time to get in on this. Obviously, Micah Parsons being number one just makes it even more interesting because we face this team again on Thanksgiving. I think that's going to matter towards potentially winning this award. It's an opportunity before that game for him potentially to really show off and jump himself in front of a guy like that specifically. And obviously, I think seeding could play into this as well because Packers holding the 1 seed right now seems to have some impact on this as well. Myles Garrett, number 2, that one, they're not going to be great, but his numbers are just insane, so we'll just see what happens. But I think this could be a good time to jump in on this at plus of 400. So if you want to get on the action, don't miss out. Do it with my bookie. Use code DOSE now. Let's get back to today's video. Are they really going to let this happen? And you still don't want to completely believe it, but that was the first time it became real of like, yo, Hutchinson might be on the board at number 2. And from there on, I think the reports just continued to kind of pile in that this was a real possibility. And it led to draft day. It led to day 1 of the draft. We're all standing there. And I just remember what felt like maybe it was all in my head, but the eruption from that Lions group that we had. It was a group of Lions fans that were kind of separated. It was every team, every NFC North team, when Jacksonville selected Trayvon Walker. I remember even my dad, after what he told me, that when he saw Trayvon Walker taken, and he doesn't follow the draft kind of like we do over here, but obviously he knew what Hutch was, being a Michigan fan. He knew what that was all about. And when they took Trayvon Walker, just his excitement, and it was the energy around us, like when that happened, you just knew Aidan Hutchinson is going to be a Lion.
Oh, that was so quick.
With the second pick in the 2022 NFL Draft,
Come on!
the Detroit Lions select Aidan Hutchinson.
Like all of the craziness, all of the options that we talked about. One thing that we never really talked about, which I always look back on, is like, why do we not talk more about the possibility of the Lions just trading up to number 1? Like, I mean, usually it doesn't happen, but it's just like, yo, whatever it takes, just get this thing done. Because you knew what Hutch was going to be. You knew what he was at Michigan, the growth that he was, the player that he was. And, man, I remember doing that. That was my favorite breakdown, I think, to ever do, was the Aidan Hutchinson breakdown. Just watching all the plays, seeing for the first time the Ohio State play where he's like, you know, taunting the tackle, like, okay, bring it on, man. And he runs the dude completely over. Like, that entire breakdown. I remember doing that because I wasn't home at the time. I remember being at Texas Roadhouse when I think that video first dropped and just being so excited of what we had put together and how long that video was. But that said, remember everybody just knowing that it was going to be Aidan Hutchinson at that point. There was just no question. It was like, that's going to be our pick, and this is crazy that this is happening. And then, of course, after he was selected, he, like Jameson Williams, came down, took pictures with the fans. I mean, it was the coolest thing ever. To Michael Banks for, you know, allowing this to be the case. I got, I think, a picture with him or like an autograph with him at OTAs. I think it was a picture. I'm a big picture guy. Getting a chance to meet him again when the Lions did their Hard Knocks first episode and getting a picture with him there too. Still thank the Jacksonville Jaguars for allowing this to happen. Thank you so much for allowing him to be a Detroit Lion. And it only could work out one way that this was the case, and it did. So this is just so amazing that he is now here. And remember doing that video of like, we know this guy can't fail. Like, Aidan Hutchinson won't fail because it's just not who he is as a player. He just gets better and better. And if you watch his Michigan film, he's ridiculous. Josh, over there at No Buts About It podcast, he sent me this. This is pretty darn cool. There you go. Now focus on this. Photograph Aidan Hutchinson, and it's got him. I think it's kind of like wearing a Michigan jersey, but it's a little bit like faded out. Maybe it's like copyright issues or something. But it's just, this thing is sick, dude. This thing is sick because, again, I'm more of like I want to get a picture with the player kind of deal. Oh, that I have an Aidan Hutchinson autograph. So to get that autograph is really cool, man. And him sending that to me, man, he didn't have to do that. Essentially, as all the reports have suggested, this essentially locks him in for the next 5 years because they also have a $20 million injury guarantee for Aidan Hutchinson in 2029, which I guess becomes fully guaranteed in March of 2028. I would, so long as he's on the roster, that becomes fully guaranteed. So it kind of does lock him into, as long as he's here through 2028, which he definitely will be based on his contract. He also is going to be locked in through 2029. He is also under contract then through 2030, which we'll see how that goes at that time. Through 2030, that would actually be an extra year beyond Micah Parsons. So I think when you look at this deal, to think that, at least by the early reports, from a per year basis, it's not the highest, which is incredible that that's even the case. the total guarantees, okay, you lock him in, maybe lose some flexibility there, but there's going to be flexibility with this next year. And you also look at it from the perspective of, hey, he has another year under contract that Micah does. And you would expect that some of these new deals are going to come in that could potentially drop that number as well. So far this season, I mean, the guy is leading the NFL in pressures with 48. Now, some of that's just opportunity, but he's played over 400 snaps. He's got 48 pressures so far this year. So more than a pressure per snap, which is crazy. And that's just all snaps. It's not even pass rush snaps, which is nuts. 7 sacks, which is 5th most in football. 4 forced fumbles. I didn't even know he had that many. That's first in the NFL. We know this guy also has picks on his resume as well. Get some of the advanced stats, like on October 16th, heading into that Tampa Bay game, it was put out there by NFL that he was chipped 36 times so far this season, which was the 5th most from any edge rusher in football. At second in pressures at 32, I think, back at that time, because according to PFF, he had 12 pressures against Tampa Bay alone. Again, a lot of that's just opportunity, because I don't know that that was his most dominant game, but I got to be honest with you, watching that Tampa Bay game, to me, it wasn't even as much of what he did on his own as a rusher. It was more about what he did to affect the offense, right? That's a team that literally felt like you were watching that Georgia game in the playoffs when he was coming out for the draft where everybody knocked him. But it was clear, like, okay, they're doing everything they can to stay away from this guy. That's how Tampa Bay's offense felt. I mean, whether it was every single pass rush snap, let's get a chip to him, or it's we're going to slide protection his way, or it's we're just not going to run his direction, we're going to keep everything away from him. I mean, the impact, there was plays in there where you had 3 guys getting hands on Aidan Hutchinson. I think that's a huge positive for him too, because it shows you the selflessness of Aidan Hutchinson, that he does not care, man. This guy's going to do it for everybody else. And then when they do give an opportunity to open up, he's going to take advantage of that. But he does it for everybody else around him as well. There's a selflessness to him, which is amazing. Toughness to battle back from that injury last year to try to make himself available for the playoff game was crazy as well. But that just reflects who he was. That was the whole idea of, like, this guy can't fail because that's just who he is as a person. Obviously, at the end of the day, to bring a team from the bottom and bring them back to life, it's taken a guy like Dan Campbell that's had that mentality and the right confidence in his team to do that, belief that they're going to get it done, and the crazy aggressiveness to have a player and a person that's been here as a player on this team when the Lions were at their worst, out of the ditch and bring them up to where they are now. It's going to take the right people. It just takes the right character. It takes the right people to do that. And Aidan Hutchinson, like Jared Goff, and we saw that clip when he was coming out of Cal, to take a team that had 1 win, get him into a bowl game by his final season there. He was talking about grit before he was drafted as a Lion, as the short that we posted with John Gruden. And then there's also a guy like Aidan Hutchinson, who was a part of that with Michigan, to help bring them back to life and be part of that team that finally beats Ohio State, that has continued on that tradition so far. To be a part of that group, Aidan Hutchinson had that same makeup of, okay, that's the kind of guy that leads you to that promised land. And we've had guys that have been battle tested that have went through that. I think it's shown a lot about who really the character of these players are. Obviously, don't want them to get hurt like that, but the way that they battle themselves back, and sometimes it does help you probably financially too. But you think about a Derek Barnes, for example, like these guys that just find a way. Malcolm Rodriguez now getting himself back. There was a report that DJ Reed was working with like trainers already. Like these guys that you just know you have the right person based on their perseverance to get back. I would throw Levi into that category for years, fighting himself back. Like, you know, you hate to see it because sometimes it just doesn't work out with injuries, but you just know what kind of character you have. And that's important because, you know, those guys are going to get banged up in the NFL, but what kind of effort are you getting and resilience are you getting to get back and become an even better player? And Hutch has been that since day one. I think an interesting stat so far this season is heading into that Tampa Bay game, according to NFL, he's had about a 50-50 split between lining at left end and right end. In the past, he was always kind of typically a lefty end. He'd line up on your right tackle with Aaron Glenn. But now that started to even out where they're just putting him everywhere, right? Maybe not as much on the inside, but both the end spots, they're finding ways to really the offense gets dictated by where he lines up, right? That you have that ability to do that now because of his flexibility to line up everywhere and find matchup for him and dictate that the offense has to stay away from this side because now he's sitting on this side. And still, when you watch him as a rusher, I think the biggest improvement I noticed this year, he still has the ridiculous spin move. Obviously, the energy is crazy, but to me, it's been working back from a knee injury or a leg injury that was that significant. It's been, one, you really haven't felt that, but two, it's been his ability to become really skinny as a pass rusher, be slippery. He's got incredible slither this season, and its ability to find small little angles and entries to get a pressure and create some havoc. His ability to do that so far this year has been incredible, and obviously dealing with all these chips and the support that he gets as well, like you have to get used to just dealing with that and working away or working around that, and obviously Calvin has kind of set that bar for him, but you just watch his ability to find a path to the quarterback is crazy. His lateral speed to stay square to the line of scrimmage, the discipline that we've seen there, and space. Of course, he's always been a really good piece for us to kind of track down quarterbacks and show that athleticism off, but we're seeing that discipline on the backside of run plays to also be impactful there as well and not get bored, right? This is a player that just wants to continue to get on the field, but not getting bored with that fact that they're trying to do everything they can to take you out of the play. And then on top of that, while I think some of the speed to power may be a little bit in work in progress to getting that back and just a true dominance of a bull rusher, that ability to just look so agile and so slippery as rusher is crazy while still having a ton of force, still having an elite get off. I mean, his timing is ridiculous. It's so consistent, agile coming out of Michigan for a guy at his size. That was such a trump card for him, I felt like, was that he was just so agile. He was so difficult because he could win inside and outside, and he was dangerous from everywhere. And he still has a lot of power that he creates great openings into those bull rush opportunities and creates such good opportunities for himself to get downhill. He can rush from every alignment. The guy is incredible. And we're seeing that again this season. This was a no-brainer. This was going to get done. But it's just so cool that Aidan Hutchinson is a Detroit Lion. It still feels a little bit impossible that this guy somehow made it to the Detroit Lions, and ever since he's been here, the Lions have been really good. Like, having this guy has meant so much about the change of culture. Responsible for this turnaround as anybody as a player on this roster, and he's as worthy of anybody on this roster of getting a contract extension, and I'm just so glad he's a Detroit Lion. Well-deserved contract, and we'll see how the details shake out, but it seems like it's going to be in a good spot for the Lions as well. But this is just great. I'm just happy it got done. Aidan Hutchinson, you are going to continue to be a Lion, and I'm so happy to say that. Thank you, Pride, for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Shout out to my bookie for sponsoring today's video. Use code DOSE when you sign up, and I'm out.